we're doing the trim router is because the trim router is directly responsible for compact routers. What do I mean by that? Well, the most popular router in this country today is a Porter Cable 690. There's more of those than all the others combined. 1 3/4 horse, no variable speed, no soft start, just router. Turn it on, 22,000 RPMs, have fun. Okay? So, at a 1 3/4 horse, at 22,000 RPM, you have to have good handles on it, both hands, and go to town. Well, some folks wanted a router that was more controllable. Why? The trim router is mine. I've used it for years and years and years for hinges. There is nothing better for inlaying hinges, and that's pretty much all I use it for is hinges. It's great. Why is it great? Because I can operate it in one hand. It's a piece of cake. One hand. It's 3/4 horse. It doesn't twist out of my hand. It's only 1/4 inch shank. Limited range of depth. 23,000 RPM. She screams. But to do what it does, laminate trim, hinges, signs, it's a piece of cake. It's very, very easy to control. So people started buying these. And of course, the first thing people did that started buying those, thinking this is a router, and they miss the word trim. Well, it's not as powerful as the other ones. So they wanted more features and more features. So the manufacturer said, we might have a niche. And the compacts were born. As you can see, they're pretty much made at the same factory, just different colored plastics on different days. These are 1 1/4 horse. 1/4 inch shank, so they're half horsepower more power. 1/4 inch shank, that's still the same. You can't get this in the half inch shanks. They're a little bit easier to move up and down, a little bit more precise than the trim is. Technically, you can use this one-handed, but it's got a little bit more juice to it. And there's some features that you really want to look at for the different routers. For example, this one is variable speed. Okay? What's variable speed important for? Pardon? Because people look at variable speed and say, I want variable speed. What do you use variable speed for? Any router bit that's over 1 inch in diameter. How many router bits over 1 inch in diameter do you think come with a 1/4 inch shank? Yeah. Yeah. So variable speed is nice, don't get me wrong. But normally for the smaller bits, that with a 1/4 inch shank, you want the puppy full out. So even though this has variable speed, it's not necessarily really going to help you. For those bigger router bits, oh absolutely, it's mandatory. You've got to have variable speed. You've got to slow these things down because otherwise they're uncontrollable. A 3-inch router bit at the tips, 3 inches in diameter, 1.5 inches from the radius. At 22,000 RPM, at the tip of that blade, it's approaching 100 miles an hour. Can you imagine trying to control something going 100 miles an hour when you're pushing into wood? It's very hard. You're going to get a lot of vibration and resistance, so you have to slow it down. This really doesn't apply. Okay? Another thing you want to look at is the bases and how they go up and down. This is fairly straightforward. You've got a screw here, and you can see that this groove, loosen it up, turn this up and down, and the platform goes up and down, and you can look right down the platform and see. What I like about this is I'll take a hinge, a lay hinge flat, and I can just hold it up here, and then move this up and down until it is even with the hinge, then I'm happy with that. And lock it in place. So this is really easy to adjust. Square, it's easy to run it on something if you need to, run it on an edge. Again, it's very controllable. This one got a round base. There's nothing wrong with the round base. Again, easy to control. They all come with these little buttons. And what these little buttons allow you to do is lock this in so that you can just use one wrench to get in here and change the bit. So they all got that. And these, just like the trim router, you've got a release tension on the motor, and now, using this swivel, you can move this up and down. And again, if you've got your router bit up here, you can get really precise as far as the depth of cut. Once you get there, locked in, you're good to go. Same with this. One of the things that's really, really good to do with these is small projects. For example, this is an old one we're going to use to make something like this. Put a picture in here or something. We just want to make a nice logo. So we've got a pattern. We either bought the pattern or made the pattern. We use this special hardboard. Most folks don't realize, but this hardboard is a 1/4 inch, dead on the money, okay? To make this project work, we're going to put our pattern over the wood, and we are going to use one of these routers. We're going to either plunge down or use it at a fixed base, but however we're going to use it, we're going to follow this pattern, okay? If we look, we'll see that that pattern is not flush to the inside. Okay? Well, if you're using a pattern bit, it'd be flush. So they didn't use a pattern bit for this. What they use? They use this little magic cut. Okay? This is bushing. Some people call them bushing, some people call them bearing. This is bushing. Okay? Porter Cable came up with this idea. So, we'll see that in this trim router, the bushing fits. And this screw comes up underneath it. So we can put different size bits here, pattern bits or whatever. And in this trim router, at a 22,000 or 23,000 RPM, it'll do a great job making that circle. This is also made by Porter Cable. This is a special base for these. This fits here. Again, this comes underneath, so now we can use this as a pattern bit. And the neat part about these bits, they're designed so that they never poke out at the pattern. They're designed to be a little bit shy of a 1/4 inch, all of them. That's why you can use it with this 1/4 inch stock as your stock to make a pattern on it. Okay? Really neat, good idea. This gives you a lot of capabilities, a lot of stuff to do. Go to the DeWalt. They don't play with Porter Cable very well, even though they're made in the same factory. Okay? So, as good as this is with its variable speed, for projects, this is better because this will take one of these bushings for patterns. Okay? To do this one, you'd have to take this off and get another base, or I don't know if the DeWalt makes their own types of bushings that go in here, but to use a bushing set, you need to get one that's got this base. If you ever want to look at the base to see what it looks like, in fact, I'll just put this in here. And you can take it in and out and take a look. Pass that around for me. Okay. What else do we need if we're going to use that? We can use it for straight rounding, we can round corners, we can do patterns, we can do all kinds of stuff. We said it, you can use it one-handed. Well, if you can use it one-handed, that means you can do stuff like this. I've got an extra hand. Can I take it in here and go around like that holding it? Absolutely. I certainly can, as long as I don't take up too much. Is it safe? No, not at all. You've got 22, 23,000 RPMs that close to your hand. If there's a catch or a bump that pops on out, there's no way a Band-Aid will fix that boo-boo. So you want to be, I think to be safe, you need to hold this. You can use clamps to hold it down. Remember, one clamp is a pivot point, 2 clamps secures it. You could use these bench dogs. These are special bench dogs. See how small they are? So you can do a lot of stuff up here, and these are out of the way for planing, for router work and stuff when you get the base going down. So these are really good ideas, and they hold this piece of wood in here and let you do whatever you want.
This has a thread on it. What's the purpose of the thread?
That's to hold it in. Because the second part of this is this. So this is on front, this is underneath,
Oh, I see.
and this screws up here and holds it in. And you'll find out that with your normal sized fingers, trying to do it in here is not the funnest thing in the world to do, but that's how it's supposed to be designed. Okay? But that's what you're looking for. If you look at a router base and see that lip, you know right away it will take those bushings. And all the bushings that Pirate Cable makes are pretty much the standard now. Triton makes their own, and Festool makes their own, and they're not interchangeable. I don't know about the wall yet. I think the wall stack bases that do have that quarter cable opening, but they're the standard. And we have kits of them starting at this big going to this big. But they're really, really helpful, and they allow you to do projects like this. If you didn't have a way to clamp stuff down, you can do this, and this actually works. This is one of these no skid bench things. And this is really designed not for you to use it like this, but just drape it. And you'll find out our piece of wood's here. This is hard to move. So while we're like this, I invite you, come up here and just use your fingers to move this piece of wood. Come on, everybody's up there, try, give it a shot. So it does a pretty good job, especially if you're using the little router going around. This will help. Did you cut yourself?
No, it's just coffee still.
Oh, okay, that's okay, I don't care about coffee. I care about cutting yourself. And there's nothing to cut yourself, that's a concern. So this is really good. Now, as good as this is, if there's any knock on it, and it's just a little knock, I found out that if I put this on a table and put the wood on top of it, and I'm really pressing down on it, when I take this off, sometimes there'll be little like dimples where this touched, but just hit a little 400 grit sandpaper and they're gone. But that's it. That's immaterial to do what this does and keep this stuff from moving. This does a good job. So, what are these things good for? These are not heavy-duty routers. These are routers that do great trim work. These are routers, this one is really, it's great for trim work. It's great for, if you want to make signs, this is good for signs. This particular bit I've got in here now is one that you can use for signs. We're going to fire this puppy up here.
Do you still make that one?
I do a Porter cable. It doesn't make this particular number, but they make it. I don't know what the number is now. The 690 has been the longest one I've known that's kept the same number. And now now you're getting 691, 692, 693s. Okay. We are going to use this to make a letter. And since this is poking out the bottom, I can't start it flush. You never want to start a cutter flush or touching the wood. So I'm just going to turn this on. not the best sign in the whole world, but you can actually carve out letters. And the more you practice this, the better you'll get. You'll find out that if you go really, really slow, you're going to have all kinds of little wavy lines. If you go really, really fast, they'll be kind of straight. So you want to get just a good way to do it. You can let it look like this. You can make templates and you can follow the templates. So if I had a template that looked like an R and I had a bushing in, I had a little router bit in there, I could just follow it along and it'd be perfect. You can hand do it. You can literally take this on a piece of wood and you can sign your name. Now, if you've ever tried to sign your name when you can't see what you're doing, you'll know that's a little awkward. So that's a little awkward with this, but you can do it. But this is just an example of something that you can easily do as long as you can see what you're doing. If I wanted to, I can do this one-handed and hold the wood down with the other. So it's not that hard. I just like to have some way to hold this in place. That's just me. We can also do a nice edge with this. We can do it as a, let me click this here real quick. We can actually use it to what it was designed for, and that's a trim router. If we're going to do a trim router, and I can get everything tangled up, can't I? I like to get this to the side. This takes an 18 millimeter. Just tighten it. Gotta be really careful. These are sharp, and we're trying to pull them out. It's easier just to take this stuff off.
You need to change.
Pardon?
You need to change.
There.
All the heat is down.
As you can see there, just because they're little doesn't mean they're easy to get to.
Trying to shade dark a little harder. I've crossed mine by a few times.
Oh, it's down here somewhere. Up there it is. Now you're seeing the joys of a trim router.
I don't think a trim router by itself.
Well, just the way this attaches and the way you adjust it in these is much better than this. So one of the things people were zoozing about in these things, of course, was what you just saw. What we're going to do now is we're actually going to trim something. So I've got a piece of wood here, but it's got a little overhang. I'm only going to go part way down this. I want the wheel touching the bottom part because I want to trim the top part to the bottom. Okay? I'm going to make sure I got this on tight, so I just take one more little. In all the years I've been using routers, I've only had one router bit ever come out of the collet while I was right over one. It didn't come all the way out, but I saw it. That one. Inherently, a quarter inch is not as safe as a half inch. A half inch, you've got a whole lot more metal for that collet to grab onto. A quarter inch, you have not near the metal for that collet to grab onto. So usually the ones that slip are the quarter inch ones. So just make sure you've got it on. The problem is if you really tighten it, really takes a lot of work to get it untightened. But all we're going to do with this, now, which way do we go? If it's a router table with a router like this, we go right to left. That means if the router's like this, we go left to right. Okay? That's if the cut is facing. If we were silly and put it on the other side, away from us, that's one, that's really bad technique, don't do it. And two, then you would go right to left. But right now, up in the air, we're going this way. I always like to get here where I can see. I did this. I want to show you one. This gives a really nice flush edge. Okay? But the secret of this is you never want to lip more than that. So if you're following a bandsaw, and I'll pass this around, if you're following a bandsaw, you don't want a gap more than that. Okay? Because then you're taking off a whole lot. This is meant to trim. This is not meant to take off huge chunks of wood. If there's any boo-boos with these little smaller, like trim routers, that's it. Now, with these, not so much. This is 1 1/4 horse. It's got a half horse more. So this actually can go through wood easier than one of those little trims can. Ideally, you still want that type of gap because it's going to be much easier for you to control the router. Okay? Also, when you do trim stuff, I was really pushing the boundaries of what I could do. See how thin that top piece is? All that whole router has to support on is that little thin piece. And really, when you design your projects, you don't want that. You want as big as base as you can to keep that router stable. Just know that the way routers are designed, for them to work on trimming, you've only got this much of your base on. That much of your base is clear. It's got to be. Okay? So you really need to be careful. If you've got a small base, it's easy to do this. and then it's going to mess up your cut because now you'll come under. Okay? So take it slowly. You don't want to do fast stuff with this. So if you're hand holding, this is what you got. Now, if you are going to hollow something out, it's infinitely preferable for you just to follow this and do a straight through cut all the way down. Okay? I still got good support, and now the centerpiece pops out. If you were to try to hollow it out yourself, here you're going to have problems because now you've got no support whatsoever. See this? This is a terrible accident waiting to happen because this will cause you to lose control of this if it bites at an angle. So ideally, the best type of cut you can do to hollow something is to just make a hole. Now I can make a hole. I can take another piece of wood and I can do it right on top, and it's perfect. I got a nice flat bottom. If I did have to come in there and scope it out, you have to kind of pre-think how you want to do this, because this is not going to be enough room for this. It is going to be enough room for that, kind of sort of. So there's nothing wrong with making another base much larger. And the only thing you have to do is know where these holes are for the screws. And then once you've got this and this solid in here, you take a 1/16 of an inch straight cutter, put it in here underneath, and then turn it so it's coming up while the router's cutting. That gives you a hole tap dead center that you can come in from the other side and cut it through. And that aligns this hole up tap dead center, which is what you need for some of these things. It's very, very common in the world of these routers, since they're easy to use and easy to move around. They don't have that weight, they don't have that torque that the bigger routers do. That a lot of times these will be used for decorative cuts. One of the neatest things I've seen is a fellow who made a big equilateral triangle. Okay? And then what he did is he took this base off, marked the holes on the base, put it in his triangle, found tap dead center. First he found tap dead center. There was a big square piece of plexiglass. Once he found tap dead center, then he used that little hole in the middle to cut a perfect circle. 8-inch circle, drew it there. And then he did the lines for the triangle, 120-degree angles based on the center. And with that, he was able to cut out the triangle. That's how he got it to be exactly the same. What you do then is you are doing a decorative piece. As you come down, and the base of the triangle is here, and now this base is here, and you want to go over. As you turn to go to this base, you put a little 1/4-inch circle, and you can just go up and down, and it's a beautiful circle, 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 circle. Oh. If he wants to do a smaller one inside that, he just takes spacers, puts them around the inside, cuts the same thing, and now he does a smaller one. He can do multiple smaller. It was quite ingenious. It was all just for the base that he did. And because he's using these smaller routers that are easier to control, he's a happy little camper. You can get ones that you can make your own circle cutting jig if you wanted to. Based on this, just come straight out here. If you have a little hole here that you can put a pin in, and put that pin in, put the pin in here, this thing will go into perfect circles, so you can do little circles. You've already got an oval, now you can do circles for clocks and stuff like that. So just playing with the base, trying different bases, can show you those neat things. How would you find about different bases? If there's one resource we've got here that nobody uses, it's these things. These are tremendous. Not only do they take you through all the routers, trim routers, compact routers, regular routers, the big heavy ones, the router tables. This is a lot of information here that you can look at your leisure. So if there's anything here, the resource that's underutilized is what you can find over there in the library. So these are neat stuff to look at. It'll tell you about what you can do, but you'll find jigs. You'll find whole books over there, nothing but jigs for routers. Bases you can do on to get these cuts. Stuff that you can use, a jig you can use on a lathe with a router to get those spiral fluted columns. Not with the lathe on, just with that jig, and as that jig moves up and down, it turns it with it. So it's pretty neat stuff out there. You can also inlays. This stuff is great for inlays, and we have an inlay kit. And unfortunately, white-side seals now. But here you've got this little piece of metal here is designed for you to put in the center of this when all the stuff is in there. And you're going to loosen the screws on the base of the router, put this in, make sure that this is in the collet, it's into here. Now you'll know that this is tapped dead center. Then you tighten the screws, and now the plate is tapped dead center, so you can do an inlay. This one uses an 1/8 inch cutting diameter spiral bit, down spiral bit. And with this, you can do stuff like this. Okay. Nice little inlay. It was done with the kit. Now, how do we get sharp corners here? We route this part, that's going to be rounded. You just take a little chisel and make the edges come together. And this, because we cut it out, is going to have sharp edges. We'll pass this around. If you want to see underneath it, that's underneath it. Line up the X's. But this is routed out, this is routed out, and this is cut. So we're going to cut a piece like this, make this pattern, and you take it to a table saw or a bandsaw and just run it through vertically, and these will fall right out. You can't really do this with one of those big honking like this routers. This trim routers are compact, especially compacts. Compacts are very good at this. But you're not going down very far. And you can use this for decoration. That's a butterfly. You can draw your own things. You can do designs. You can do swirly lines. You can use spiral bits so that you can actually put stuff in them. If I took I can take epoxy, put some black dye in here, pour it in here. When the epoxy dries, send it through a planer, and this would be black lettering. I can also use the Alumilite. I can make it green, I can make it metallic. I can do all kinds of stuff in here, run it through a planer when it's dry, and get beautiful letters. Another thing you could do is if you wanted to paint it, you can spray paint on here. When the paint dries, run it through a planer, and you'll have, again. So there's all kinds of stuff that you're just limited by your imagination. But this is a simple little way to get designs in. And if you really work at it, you'd be surprised at what you can hand do with one of these. All this is a simple little 3/8 inch V-bit. I'll pass this around. This is the cord over the D-wall. Underneath the cord of the D-wall. Doesn't look like much, but that's it. That's a 3/8 inch maximum depth. I mean, maximum width of the cut. But that's a 90-degree angle. And that's a really good one if you ever wanted to try to make signs, hand letter something. Neat stuff. Now, what advantage do these have over a 690 or one of the 800 series, a 2 1/4 horse soft start variable speeds, or the big puppies, the ones you normally put in the tables, the 3 1/4 horses? These are easy to use. These are really easy to use. I mean, it doesn't get much better as far as depth of cut. To line one of these is just an absolute piece of cake. Just turn this, and down she goes. And I like this much better than the trim because this gives me a lot of room to put my stubby little fingers. It's much easier to get into here and adjust stuff than it is with the trim. Like I said, I've really got this set up home just to do one thing and one thing only, and that's to put hinges and stuff. And now that I'm doing my hinges another way, I'm using the router table for them, so I'm not using this hardly at all anymore. But this is a good go-to grab it and go router. I can do the same thing with this, as far as the lettering goes. I like this because I can see much better. If I'm going to put that groover bit in here, same with the DeWalt. And see about the right distance. When you look through there, that's a pretty big window to see what you're doing. So if you were going to cut this out, you can see what you're doing a whole lot better. And normally what you do, you don't use pencil like this. You normally get a printer, write the words that you want to do, print it out, glue it on top of here, and then go ahead and plunge and off you go. When you get done, you can either peel it off or run it through the planer. Okay? But that'll give you an idea of the vision that you can see by looking at these. And the DeWalt's the same thing. DeWalt's got really good vision. I like it. It's a great little router. I just wish it had that little base over here for the porter cable bushings. That kind of limits this particular base, but I can remedy that by making another base that would take the bushings or just buying it. There are more accessories for these as far as bases go than there are for the big routers. The big routers, about the only thing you get on the bases is circle cutters. These allow you to do all kinds of things. And plus, here you can see that you've got a round base over here in case you want to follow around curve. You've got straight to go the same distance here, but now you're going on the edge and you want it to be straight. Here you've got straight, but now you've got a little bit different, so you've got a little further from the inside. Just the way this base is designed, it gives you capabilities that the others don't have. I can follow an oval in this side. I can take this side. I can follow an edge really easy. And this one I can follow an edge even further out. So they make these very, very easy to work with. There's a lot of thought that goes into the bases, but there's still stuff that you can do to make them yours. Frankly, when people ask me anymore to recommend a starting router for them, I like these compacts. I really do. The 690 is a great router. Again, there's more 690s out than all those combined. There's more stuff for them out there. But it's a hard one to get used to because the second you turn one on, you can feel it rotating your hand as that speeds up. These have not quite the horsepower, so you don't get that torque effect. It's still there, but it's not nearby. These are much easier to control. Plus, I like how well you can see. Now, there are limitations. Only 1/4" shank, which means you're not going to find big bits, which is good because big bits in this are not safe. Okay? I would no more take, well, first of all, I couldn't find one, but I couldn't find a big bit with only 1/4" shank because even the manufacturers know that's not safe. But these are good, easy ones to use. There's a lot of stuff available. They're easy to control. Like I said, I use a trim router for years and years for hinges.